cuando me la enviaron. Y yo dije, oh my god.
Sí, sí,
Entiendo que
no, me estoy quejando.
como que la good morning. Como para no hacer enfoques de inclusión, ahí entiendo esa.
Sí,
Sí,
claro.
pero yo duro que igual, que no dan para aportar a la gestión.
Por eso es que la muestra.
Sí, estamos muy bien. Ya total gobierno de actividad.
Yo cuando vi eso, es que
No te preocupes, que
¡qué traicionero! Not yet.
The 10,192nd meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is non-proliferation. I give the floor to the representative of the President. We regret that some delegations have once again tried to prompt the Security Council to violate its own decisions and rules of procedure. An illusion of a purported snapback mechanism having been activated are groundless for a host of reasons which we all know about and which we've drawn your attention to on numerous occasions. Resolution 2231 is no longer in force as of the 18th of October 2025, in keeping with the schedule. On that day, the Security Council stopped its consideration of the Iranian nuclear program and non-proliferation. That agenda item was struck off the list of the Security Council's agenda items. A relevant consensus decision was clearly set forth in Resolution 2231. Therefore, withdrawal of agenda items to 2016, President's Note number 44 is no longer relevant either, in accordance with which the President establishes relevant reports and the Security Council hears briefings on them. Since the 17th of October 2025, the Secretariat hasn't had such a mandate, nor does the Security Council have a mandate to discuss these matters. Mr. President, these facts leave no shadow of a doubt. Initiatives put forward by colleagues to hold today's meeting are not rooted in procedure, but rather in exclusively political considerations. They're trying to impose their opinion on everyone else, foisting this opinion about the snapback on everyone else. They continue to flout the rules and to request meetings on an agenda item which simply doesn't exist, thereby exacerbating the serious divisions we have in the Security Council. The Russian Federation categorically rejects such an approach. In light of the above, we'd like to ask for the presidency to put the issue of this briefing, the holding of this briefing, to a procedural vote. We call all responsible and conscientious Security Council members to vote against the adoption of the agenda and to prevent certain delegations from undermining the credibility of the Security Council and its decisions so as to further their own interests. I thank you. President, I thank the Russian Federation for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
President, China supports what has been stated by the Russian Federation. China has repeatedly reiterated that Security Council Resolution 2231 expired and terminated on the 18th of October 2025. The Council has concluded its consideration of the Iranian nuclear issue, and the Secretary General should cease submitting the relevant report. The current situation in the Middle East and the Iranian nuclear issue are at a critical juncture. The Council should play a constructive role in promoting negotiations and de-escalating tensions. Certain members, under the pretext of the so-called support of diplomatic efforts, have insisted on forcing the Council to convene under an agenda item that has already been terminated. This has not only deepened division within the Council, but also undermines the atmosphere for negotiations and seriously hinders the process of seeking a political settlement of the Iran nuclear issue. China is gravely concerned about this. China urges the countries concerned to stop engaging in political manipulation in the Council, faithfully implement the termination day measures under Resolution 2231, uphold the authority of the Council and the credibility of multilateral diplomacy, and create conditions conducive to a political settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. I thank you, President.
Je remercie le représentant.
I thank the representative of China for that statement. I now give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Royaume-Uni plutôt.
Thank you, President. We reject the points made by Russia and China. Today's meeting is fully in line with the decisions and procedure of the Council. The United Kingdom, alongside France and Germany, triggered the snapback procedure in full accordance with Security Council Resolution 2231. We did so because of Iran's significant non-performance of its commitments under the JCPOA. Iran's nuclear escalation has been detailed in over 60 IAEA reports over the last 6 years. The snapback process completed on the 28th of September 2025, and no alternative resolution was agreed. As such, Security Council Resolution 2231 remains in force, and 6 UN Security Council resolutions have come back into force, including sanctions and the 1737 Committee. Iran, and indeed all UN member states, including members of this Council, are obligated to comply with these resolutions. Colleagues, all of us want a diplomatic solution to the Iranian nuclear issue, but preventing the Council from discussing these vital issues and undermining the UN architecture that was developed by this Council does not bring us closer to that goal. The United Kingdom will therefore vote in favour of the adoption of the agenda, and we urge all Council members to do the same.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Thank you, President. I too would like to react to what has just been said by my Russian and Chinese colleagues, and to support what was just said by the representative of the UK. We'd like to recall a few facts. Last September, the Security Council carried out the so-called snapback procedure to reimpose international sanctions against Iran. During this process, this a draft which would have permanently lifted sanctions on the Iranian nuclear program. Consequently, and in accordance with the provisions of Resolution 2231, the Council restored the 6 resolutions established to restrict the Iranian nuclear program and to ensure that they were for exclusively peaceful purposes. The conclusion of this process also prolonged the application of Resolution 2231. This was to be extinguished only if the Iranian nuclear issue could be considered as definitively settled. And that was why the Secretariat has shared the information on the sanctions and on the 1737 Sanctions Committee. The Resolution 2231 is in force. The Council should be holding half-yearly meetings on this. We also think that it's legitimate for the Council to meet to provide support to ongoing efforts and to achieve a lasting political settlement to the Iranian nuclear issue. It is legitimate for us to have different understandings of the situation. It's normal that we have discussions. Everyone around this table must respect these decisions of the Security Council that brings us all together. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. We strongly reject the assertions made by the representatives of the Russian Federation and China, and fully support the statements that have been made by the representative of the United Kingdom and of France. We are, of course, in support of moving forward with this meeting. Resolution 2231 remains a matter properly before the Security Council. Member states have every right, and indeed this Council has a responsibility to discuss it. We are disappointed that we continue to see obstruction from 2 Council members on this file. Efforts to prevent discussion do not strengthen multilateralism. They weaken it. The Security Council should never shy away from examining issues that fall squarely within its responsibilities simply because some members find the discussion inconvenient. I urge everyone to join us in voting yes to adopt the agenda, hold the meeting, and allow the Council to proceed with its work. Thank you, sir.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of the United States for her statement. In light of the request put forward and the remarks made by Security Council members, I suggest that we put the provisional agenda to a vote. I will now submit the provisional agenda to a vote. Those in favor of adopting the provisional agenda, non-proliferation, please raise your hands.
Ceux qui sont contre,
Against,
y a-t-il des abstentions?
any abstentions? Two abstentions. The provisional agenda is hereby adopted. I invite the representative of Germany to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. And peace-building affairs to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. To participate in this meeting. It is so decided. Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo.
Mr. President, as noted in the Secretary General's most recent report on Resolution 2231, dated Agreement. This is the instrument that also enabled the agency to verify and monitor the implementation of Iran's nuclear-related commitments under the Joint Comprehensive Plan. Now lost continuity of knowledge across all of Iran's declared nuclear facilities. This loss of continuity extended to the production and current inventory of operations and had been unable to conduct complementary access to any sites or locations in Iran. Mr. President, while significant differences remain between the relevant parties on the way forward regarding June, Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding contains several important agreements on nuclear issues already reached between the United States and Iran. They include related to Iran's nuclear needs. Today, a framework for further negotiations remains a critical step towards the peaceful settlement of the Iran nuclear issue. The second (2231) and their broader goal of strengthening international peace and security. And the United Nations stands ready to support these efforts. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing.
General, who a few weeks ago published his half-yearly report on the implementation of Resolution 2231. It is of the utmost importance for the Council presidency to allow the holding of this half-yearly meeting in accordance with established practice, and I thank you for doing so, Mr. President. Since June 2025, the Iranian nuclear issue has given rise to an acute crisis that is seriously affecting international peace and security. The origin of this crisis is the conduct of Iran, which has persistently violated its commitment under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. In this context, Iran has accumulated more than 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, enriched to 60%, which is an amount sufficient to produce around 10 nuclear explosive devices. Iran is the only non-nuclear weapon state to have accumulated such a quantity of enriched uranium. The IAEA has lost continuity of knowledge regarding this material as Iran has ceased granting access to IAEA inspectors. The Board of Governors of the IAEA has found Iran to be in breach of its Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement in June 2025. On the 17th of June this year, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the US and Iran to bring an end to nearly 4 months of open conflict. This memorandum is a first positive step which provides for a cessation of hostilities, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to free passage of shipping, and the launch of negotiations which within 60 days should result in a robust non-proliferation agreement, which is an essential precondition for the lifting of sanctions. We note, however, that despite Pakistan and Qatar's good offices, we thank them for those, and despite the intensive discussions, Iran has violated its commitments under the memorandum. Iran has not brought an end to its attacks against vessels in the Strait, which it was obliged to provide freedom of passage to. In the last few days, it has carried out further unacceptable attacks on the Kingdom of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and Jordan, of civilian infrastructure. France condemns these strikes in the strongest possible terms, and we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the security, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of all our partners in the Middle East. Iran is responsible for the current situation. Through these new attacks, it has triggered a cycle of reprisals that should come to an end without delay, which are jeopardizing the conclusion of the 60-day time frame under the memorandum for a final agreement. To come out of the current deadlock, it's essential for the current escalation to cease and for Iran to fully comply with its commitment concluding a lasting agreement, providing that Iran will never acquire a nuclear weapon, remains a priority. France supports the detailed negotiations underway with the United States on the nuclear issue. Only the conclusion and implementation of such an agreement will make it possible at the right time to consider the lifting of Security Council sanctions. In parallel with these negotiations, Iran must urgently return to full compliance with its safeguards obligations. In this regard, it must in particular provide the International Atomic Energy Agency with access and information necessary to verify the status of its stockpile of 60% enriched uranium. Let me recall that the snapback procedure was completed last September as a result of Iran's violations of its commitments under the JCPOA. Resolution 2231 remains in force, and the Iranian nuclear issue remains on the Council's agenda. Iran, in this context, is under an obligation to suspend all enrichment and reprocessing activities. Second, Iran must guarantee the unconditional reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which must be open and unrestricted in accordance with the law of the sea. The recent strikes on commercial vessels in Omani territorial waters are unacceptable. France, together with the UK and other regional and international partners, has taken the initiative to establish an independent, neutral, and strictly defensive multinational mission, which stands ready to contribute to efforts to restore safe conditions for navigation in this international waterway, including through mine clearance operations. The involvement of a third party is essential to restore the freedom of navigation without delay, to facilitate the evacuation of seafarers and vessels, and to rebuild trust within the maritime industry on a lasting basis. This must be carried out in accordance with the framework of the law of the sea, and we will firmly oppose any arrangement that fails to comply with it. Third, Iran must put an end to its destabilizing activities against states in the region. This, firstly, means cutting off all support for non-state armed groups, including Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, radical militias in Iraq and in Syria, and secondly, bringing an end to its ballistic missile attacks. Mr. President, only the conclusion and implementation of a robust non-proliferation agreement will make it possible to consider the lifting of the relevant Security Council sanctions and lasting de-escalation in the region. We will continue to work with all of our partners to contribute to efforts aimed at achieving a durable diplomatic solution that will guarantee that Iran will never acquire a nuclear weapon. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the DRC presidency for convening this regular meeting on the report of the Secretary General on the implementation of Resolution 2231. I also thank Undersecretary General Di Carlo for her valuable contribution, and I welcome the participation of the representatives of Germany and the European Union. Mr. President, while we sincerely welcome the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran, it must now be comprehensively implemented. The recent bouts of repeated escalation are unacceptable. Cessation of hostilities is crucial for the region and global stability. Iran must cease any and all threats and attacks against both the Gulf states and maritime vessels. It is imperative that free and safe passage in the Strait of Hormuz is fully restored. We reiterate the importance of diplomacy and dialogue and support much-needed negotiations regarding further elements, key among them the issue of the Iranian nuclear program. While we wish for continued diplomatic engagement and successful future talks, the legal reality so far has not changed. The UN sanctions against Iran remain in force. They reflect international law, and all UN member states, including the member of Security Council Resolution 2231, which cites the latest report of the IAEA of 4th June. The situation effectively has lost the continuity of knowledge of the most important aspects of the Iranian nuclear program, including its nuclear material and its nuclear program that would enable the lifting of international sanctions against it. The path forward is very clear. Iran must respect and implement its binding agreements under international law. Not be reconciled with any peaceful purpose. Iran must meaningfully engage in serious negotiations, cease its escalatory nuclear program, and a nuclear weapon. We must uphold Council decisions, including the 1737 sanctions regime, until the actions of Iran
General Di Carlo for her briefing and the Secretariat for its continued work on the implementation of Resolution 2231, still an essential framework for this Council. Remain deeply concerned by the scope and nature of Iran's nuclear program. Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. It must commit clear the size, composition, and whereabouts of its enriched uranium stockpile. Key aspects of Iran's activities cannot be verified. To restore full, effective, and constructive cooperation with the IAEA without delay. That means all necessary information and that Iran's program is exclusively peaceful. Mr. President, diplomacy remains the only effective, sustainable path for the Iranian nuclear issue and for the wider and hope they can resume soon, leading to a credible, verifiable, sustainable, and durable peace. A negotiated outcome is the only path that regional de-escalation. Any future understanding must rest on full respect for international law, the UN Charter, the NPT, security, with full and unconditional return to the status quo ante in the Strait of Hormuz, demands that we safeguard the non-proliferation regime. Any other course. I thank you.
Je remercie la représentante.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. And I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
And on commercial shipping. But we can continue to stand in solidarity with our Gulf and regional partners. The fragility of the current situation and performance of its JCPOA commitments. The United Kingdom, alongside France and Germany, triggered the snapback process. That process was completed on the 28th of September 2025. Arms embargo. And we call on all UN member states to fully comply with the provisions of the relevant resolutions. The US-Iran Memorandum of is not a technical detail. It is central to trust, to confidence, and the long-term success of any agreement. The end result must be a negotiated We're prepared to respond positively to credible, verifiable progress by Iran. And the UK stands ready to support efforts to help translate the US-Iran Memorandum of Understanding
to once again express our disappointment owing to the fact that the majority of Security Council members are continuing to indulge the attempts of some states to cast doubt in connection with the Iranian nuclear program narrative. We're grateful to colleagues who demonstrated a principled and objective position and who did not support the We've set out our position on many occasions at official UN meetings, at dozens of such meetings, in fact. The last such meeting the UK, France, and Germany had no right to trigger the snapback. We won't delve into those details. All interested parties can refer to our many statements as well as to the letters disseminated to the effect that Resolution 2231 remains valid and that its full mandate and reporting cycle is being maintained. This was aptly demonstrated by the fact that force, and of the fact that certain elements stemming from the resolution's mandate are simply being used by some Western countries, not because this is what procedure calls for, but rather because it is in keeping with their position on Iran. By Mr. Antonio Guterres, one for which he bears personal responsibility. In fact, the publication of this report is an example of the flagrant violation by the SG of his mandate by the Secretariat, for instance, notifying member states about the re-entry into force of anti-Iranian Security Council resolutions, the reinstatement of the 1737 Committee program as a whole. We cannot but draw your attention to the cynical attempts by Western states to lay their own fault at somebody else's door. It's an open secret that the Thus, it's very strange to hear from the US delegation these very strong pronouncements supporting Security Council Resolution 2231. But in practice, they supported the US and Israeli strikes on Iranian territory, including on peaceful atom infrastructure, which is under IAEA safeguards. And from these delegations, we continue transfer of nuclear materials to military uses in Iran. Every time we see the EU and the US colleagues demanding for Iran to engage in serious talks, well, they're saying this although Iran was attacked twice at the height of such diplomatic efforts. And despite this, Iran actually continued its contacts with the US. Moreover, these obligations can't even name what actually happened, what transpired in June of 2025, what made the work of IAEA inspectors impossible. It was the first series of US and Israeli strikes what is patently obvious, they are refusing to call a spade a spade. Mr. President, the Russian Federation categorically rejects attempts to continue to escalate tensions without any and further exacerbate the procedural crisis at the Security Council, which is having a negative impact on the Council's work across various spheres, in first and foremost as regards subsidiary bodies. They are what instills hope of resolving any contradictions and misunderstandings using peaceful means. We urge Western colleagues to
Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
Mr. President, at the outset, we also express our appreciation for His Excellency, the Secretary General, for presenting the 21st report, which underscores the importance of following and security. Mr. President, since the 28th of February, our region is witnessing one of the most dangerous waves of escalation structure. In addition, Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz to international navigation, creating an unprecedented reality for the global manifested in a sense of insecurity and erosion of confidence and destabilization. They continue Mr. President, in this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain wishes to convey three main messages. First, the Kingdom of Bahrain in which the Council invested its hope to address the issue through peaceful means. However, the findings of the that the problem was never the absence of agreements, but rather the absence of commitment to their implementation. Today, the same Jordan and threatening the security and freedom of international navigation and targeting the commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz it similarly did not honor the commitments it undertook in the recent Memorandum of Understanding, nor did it heed the international community's call not a path for resolving disputes, but rather a means of managing crises and gaining time. While its positions and aggressions on approach that has become accustomed to using agreements as a means of easing pressure, while actions on the ground continue in the opposite direction. Record of non-implementation, and for how long will diplomacy remain hostage to promises that do not translate into compliance? Second, no diplomacy knowledge regarding the Iranian nuclear program. It is therefore a necessary condition to restore full cooperation with the agency to rebuild continue while targeting maritime passages, commercial vessels, tankers, occurs, and while Iran continues to support has proven that agreements alone are not enough. Security Council resolutions will not achieve their objectives unless they are accompanied by effective implementation. Their objectives. The success of any diplomatic effort remains contingent on the commitment of all parties, especially Iran. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Bahrain calls upon the Security Council to obligations to become mere texts without implementation in order to preserve the Council's credibility and to promote peace, security, and stability in the region and the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Bahrain for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Panama. Rosemary DiCarlo, and we thank her for her briefing. We greet here the representatives of the delegations who honor us with their participation. Provides an update regarding the status of implementation of the resolution and includes a summary of the latest report of the International Atomic Energy Agency which highlight the persistent obstacles preventing the agency from fully carrying out its verification and monitoring responsibilities under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of been fully implemented for more than 5 years now. This has prevented the IAEA from providing credible assurances regarding the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear We reiterate our call on Iran to cooperate fully, immediately, and on a sustained basis with the IAEA by facilitating the access it requires international stability. We place our hope in the continuation of dialogue between the United States and Iran as a constructive step towards easing diplomatic solution, strengthening regional stability. We hope that the agreements reached will complement the binding non-proliferation commitments already made. And finally, President, we call on all parties to act responsibly and to refrain from taking any measures that could further exacerbate tensions. Thank you very much.
Expresses its deep concern at the escalation in tensions in the region, which is in no one's interest. The cycle of violence and instability must end. Instability. Evidently, there is no alternative to continued engagement, dialogue, and diplomacy to achieve the shared goal of peace and stability in the region. That diplomacy and dialogue should remain the guiding principles for achieving negotiated settlement of all contentious issues two parties agreed to address issues through negotiations in order to reach a mutually acceptable settlement. Any interruption in this diplomatic Pakistan, along with partners, has been making constructive diplomatic engagement in supporting de-escalation, ceasefire efforts, and the broader pursuit for you. And we look forward to continued constructive engagement between the parties. President, as these sensitive negotiations continue, we should MOU achievement of a comprehensive final deal and advancement of peace and security for the benefit of all in the region and beyond.
No in the procedural vote on the provisional agenda. We register our regret about the result of the vote. Proper settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue bears on the restoration of peace and stability in the Middle East and concerns the shared interests of the international community. Pursuant to the memorandum, the US and Iran commit themselves to respecting each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, permanently halting military activities across all fronts, and reach a solution that addresses each other's concerns, lift sanctions on Iran the soonest, and strive for substantive progress. Interests of the parties concerned, Iran should continue to honor its commitment not to develop nuclear weapons. As a state party to the NPT and a non-nuclear weapon state, Iran enjoys the legitimate right to the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. The peaceful nature that rendered Iran's nuclear facilities inaccessible to IAEA inspections. The U.S. should take concrete actions to create favorable conditions for political settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. In seeking a political settlement of the issue at hand. Security Council Resolution 2231 expired on October 18th of 2025. The Security Council has ended its consideration in the Middle East. China has been actively working to end hostilities and promote peace. As a party to the JCPOA and a permanent member of the Security Council, China has consistently views and proposals. China stays committed to playing an active and constructive role in achieving enduring peace in the Middle East and will contribute its wisdom and efforts toward a peaceful settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. Thank you, President.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. And
Secretary General's report on the implementation of Resolution 2231 is no technical account. It is also a warning regarding the deterioration of related event, rather the consequence of unmet commitments, the erosion of trust, and the weakening of the incentives underpinning the framework that was agreed supported by Resolution 2231. Against this backdrop, Colombia welcomes the recent diplomatic progress as an opportunity that should not be missed. Mr. President, agreements such as this demonstrate that consensus building remains possible. More important, verification mechanisms, but also demonstrate demonstrated that balanced, technically sound, and transparent agreements reminding us that lasting progress can only be built on respect for international obligations and genuine forge and preserve common rules and to trust in those as tools for managing their differences. When trust disappears, uncertainty takes over. Progress achieved and transform this opportunity into sustainable results. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative.
In 2231. And thank you, Undersecretary General DiCarlo, for your presentation. The proliferation challenge posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran demands this Council's sustained attention. Practical arrangements remain operative. Through the snapback mechanism established under Resolution 2231, the Council reinstated Resolutions 1696, long sought to advance beyond the international community's line of sight. Last month, the IAEA Board of Governors adopted a resolution which received broad international support and reiterated material at all affected Iranian facilities. And since late February 2026, that loss of continuity extends to every uranium stockpile and other previously declared low-enriched uranium stocks for over a year. In defying its Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the NPT, week, Iran has taken actions that defy the substance and the spirit of the understanding established between our two countries. And Qatar. Iran's leaders have a historic opportunity to transform their country for their people. The decision is theirs. To resolve concerns related to Iran's nuclear program. We hope Iran chooses to come back into compliance with its obligations and to engage seriously objects. But to be clear, the United States stands ready to hold Iran to account for its acts that defy international adopted by this Council to lift sanctions under these resolutions. Member states must implement the reinstated resolutions in good faith. They cannot be met with Council equivocation and obstruction. In subverting the 1737 regime, UNSC and we urge fellow Council members to join us in upholding the instruments of this body. Thank you.
For her briefing and the Secretary General for his report on the implementation on Resolution 2231. Mr. President, Denmark supports all diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions which pose a threat to the safety and stability of the entire region. We urge all parties to show restraint. We call on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz with unconditional in light of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium and its previous enrichment activities. Its lack of cooperation with the IAEA constitutes a nuclear proliferation crisis. We remain fully to provide verifiable declarations about the quantity and whereabouts of the nuclear material and related activities to the IAEA, whose monitoring and verification work will be key in any future deal. With the resolutions of the IAEA Board of Governors. Mr. President, the reinstatement of 6 Security Council resolutions as a result of the snapback, as approved by this Council, Denmark calls on all UN member states to fully implement the restrictive measures under these fully reinstated resolutions. Mr. President, in closing, Denmark has always supported
Floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. We join in thanking the Undersecretary General for her briefing and in welcoming the distinguished colleagues participating. Of this resolution and its legacy mechanisms. Liberia notes these differing legal positions. Yet, integrity of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and our shared responsibility to protect humanity from the catastrophic risks of nuclear. When multilateral communication fractures, the space for miscalculation grows exponentially. No single power bloc benefits from it. First, transparency must outlast political disputes. Technical cooperation with the IAEA is a fundamental access to accurately reconstruct nuclear baselines. Second, we must seize the existing rather than leaning into rigid punitive measures that close diplomatic doors. This Council should universally support the current 60-day negotiation framework can be resolved through reciprocal good faith diplomacy. Liberia urges all major powers to exercise
Statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, we thank USU DiCarlo for her the indispensable role that the IAEA verification and monitoring play in safeguarding enriched uranium and in ensuring nuclear safety and global stability. broader pattern of military escalations across the Middle East. These renewed attacks and escalations risk further destabilization and carrying profound implications for regional system with the purpose of the United Nations Charter. In this regard, we call for respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of these brotherly countries in the Gulf. Somalia welcomes the June 17 signing of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran, facilitated by Pakistan and Qatar. We stress the importance of maintaining momentum free of nuclear weapons and for all regional states to join the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons without exception. We also reiterate the importance of guaranteeing the freedom of navigation and in international waterways, including collective response grounded in the principle of good neighborliness, genuine dialogue, mutual respect, and renewed commitment to multilateralism. Somalia remains committed to engaging constructively with all Council members
deliver a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Distinguished members of the Council, the Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to thank In this spirit, we would like to reaffirm our commitment to international efforts seeking to prevent nuclear proliferation, as well as to the peaceful in exercising its verification and monitoring activities. This situation underscores the importance of preserving the conditions necessary for the agency to discharge its On this note, we'd like to highlight ongoing positive cooperation with the agency. This is important so as to bolster trust and promote issues on our agenda today. Without prejudice to the different assessments expressed on this issue, my delegation remains convinced that the Security Council should be able to continue its work in the spirit of responsibility. Non-proliferation is one of the key pillars of our collective security. Furthermore, we stand convinced that no lasting solution restoration of trust between the parties and creating conducive conditions to further diplomatic efforts. Far from being wishful thinking, this call quieted by the deterioration of the regional security context, as well as by the ramifications of the recent hostilities, the ramifications they're having on the prospects of a lasting its commitment to the objectives of nuclear non-proliferation, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and the central role played by the Security Council in the that responsibility being the maintenance of international peace and security. It is in this spirit that the Democratic Republic of the Congo will continue supporting all initiatives I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President.
I'm honored to address the Council today on behalf of the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas. I would also like to thank Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the Secretariat for their work related to the implementation of Resolution 2231. We take note of the 21st report of the Secretary General on the implementation of Resolution 2231 and thank you. And the full restoration of freedom of navigation and safe transit through the Strait of Hormuz. This is essential for regional stability diplomacy is the only way to sustainably resolve all outstanding concerns, including on Iran's nuclear and ballistic programs and its destabilizing activities in the region. Parties should continue engaging in good faith in efforts to reach a sustainable agreement on the ground in a verifiable way. The High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy will continue to engage to ensure the exclusively peaceful Despite all diplomatic efforts, Iran's escalating nuclear trajectory over the last 6 years continues an urgent and profound nuclear proliferation concern unable to further verify, and for 2025 cannot draw any safeguards conclusions with respect to nuclear material previously declared due to Iran's persistent lack of cooperation enrichment capacities, including low and highly enriched uranium. Iran must not ever be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. We call on Iran to allow the monitoring of clear and verifiable steps that Iran should take in relation to negotiations on its nuclear program. The European Union fully supports the High Representative will remain engaged with all relevant parties, including Iran, and spare no effort to support political and diplomatic efforts to
I now give the floor to the representative of Germany.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, President.
The Security Council today. I would like to thank Undersecretary General Di Carlo for her valuable briefing on the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. We greatly appreciate the Council's continued engagement on the critical issue of the Iranian nuclear program, which poses a threat to peace and security, which requires collective action. The JCPOA, endorsed by Resolution 2231 over 10 years ago, was a landmark agreement that successfully concluded years of negotiation. The recent Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the United States was a diplomatic breakthrough, and we thank all those involved, including Pakistan, Qatar, and all other mediators on this achievement. We condemn Iran's recent attacks in the Strait of Hormuz and against regional states, and strongly encourage to continue the negotiations. In these uncertain times, it is essential to emphasize the following: a very verifiable agreement that addresses the urgent concerns regarding Iran's nuclear activities is indispensable. Germany, together with its E3 partners, stands ready to support negotiations, as well as the implementation of future agreements with diplomatic and technical means. We are furthermore prepared to assess and support lifting nuclear-related sanctions, but only after concrete, verifiable steps by Iran on its nuclear program and Iran's return to full compliance with its legally binding obligations under the NPT and all relevant Security Council resolutions. Until we reach this decisive point, we must continue to ensure that established UN nations procedures, such as the 1737 Sanctions Committee, remain intact. And allow me, Mr. President, to highlight the following 2 points. First, we deeply regret that 2 members of the Security Council continue to block any progress regarding the implementation of the reinstated Security Council resolution, whether it be updating the sanction list or establishing a panel of experts. We consider and deeply regret that the United Nations as a whole and the Security Council in particular are undermined by this approach. Second, we reiterate that the essential role of the International Atomic Energy Agency and that Iran must resume full cooperation with the agency, allow its inspectors access, and disclose the location and quantity of all enriched nuclear material, in particular the stockpile of highly enriched uranium for which there is no civilian justification. Mr. President, it is in all of our interest that Iran does not acquire a nuclear weapon. Germany, with its E3 partners France and the United Kingdom, will continue to do its utmost to ensure a sustainable and verifiable solution that addresses all concerns regarding Iran's nuclear program. I thank you very much.
Je remercie le
I thank the representative of Germany for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting stands adjourned.
you.